I am Abigail, 32 years old, and until yesterday, I thought my husband Michael was still deployed overseas with his unit. I never expected a simple family dinner at my in-laws would end with my mother-in-law slapping me so hard I crashed into the wall, my sister-in-law spitting in my face, and my brother-in-law laughing while recording the whole thing on his phone. They called me a gold digger who trapped their precious son and brother. They thought no one would ever know what happened in that dining room. They were completely wrong. If you want to know what happened when that front door suddenly opened and their absolute worst nightmare walked through it, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button and get ready for a story about family betrayal and the sweetest revenge you have ever heard. Before I dive into the horrific events of last night, you need to understand how Michael and I met and why his family seemed to hate me from the very beginning, even though they tried to hide their true feelings at first. 4 years ago, I was working as an elementary school teacher in a small town outside of Fort Stewart. I absolutely loved my job teaching third graders, and while the pay was modest, it was fulfilling work that made me genuinely happy every single day. One weekend in June, my friend Olivia invited me to a barbecue at her place. I almost declined because I had a huge stack of papers to grade, but something deep inside told me to go anyway. That something turned out to be pure fate working in my favor. Michael was there visiting Olivia's husband, who served with him in the same unit. He was tall, confident, but not arrogant at all, with kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. When our eyes met across that crowded backyard, it was like one of those moments from a romantic movie that you never believe actually happens in real life. He walked over carrying 2 drinks, handed me one, and said with this amazing grin, "I was getting this for someone else, but suddenly I cannot remember who that someone was." His smile was so genuine and warm that I burst out laughing, and we ended up talking for hours and hours. Our romance was an absolute whirlwind from day one. Michael was an Army captain who had been decorated for bravery during his previous tour overseas, respected by all his men, and completely dedicated to serving our country. We connected on every possible level, from our shared love of old black and white classic movies to our dreams of eventually settling down on a small farm somewhere quiet and peaceful when he retired from active duty. After 3 months of dating, he introduced me to his family for the first time. The first meeting seemed to go well on the surface, at least that is what I thought back then. His father, General Jason Walker, had retired from the Army after 30 years of distinguished service, and he was polite but definitely reserved around me. His mother, Karen, came from old money and had that particular way of smiling that never quite reached her eyes. His sister Ashley, who was 2 years younger than Michael, hugged me, but it felt stiff and forced, while his brother Justin, the youngest at 25, barely looked up from his phone during our entire visit. "They just need some time to warm up to you," Michael assured me afterward, when I mentioned feeling like they were holding back. "They're really protective of me after what happened with my ex-girlfriend before you." He did not elaborate on that situation, and I did not push him for details. Looking back now, I absolutely should have pressed him for more information about what exactly had happened. When Michael proposed 6 months later, I was over the moon with happiness. We started planning a small, intimate wedding ceremony, but his parents immediately insisted on something much grander and more elaborate. "A Walker does not get married in someone's backyard," Karen had said with that tight smile of hers that I was starting to recognize meant trouble. The wedding ended up being held at their exclusive country club, with over 300 guests, most of whom I had never met in my entire life. It was absolutely beautiful, but completely overwhelming for a small-town girl like me. During the reception, I overheard Karen telling one of her friends, "She seems sweet enough, but I worry she's not built for military life. Teachers rarely are, and her family background is so incredibly modest." The words stung deeply, but I brushed them off as wedding day stress and nerves. Michael always defended me whenever he noticed the subtle digs and comments. "Mom, Abigail grew up in a military family. Her father was a sergeant for 20 years. She understands this life better than most civilian women," he would say firmly. But the comments continued in increasingly veiled forms over the years. Questions about my clothes, my career aspirations, whether I plan to actually continue working after having children someday. When Michael received orders for a 9-month deployment overseas, I was absolutely heartbroken but completely supportive of his duty. The week before he left, we stayed holed up in our small 2-bedroom house on base, shutting out the entire world around us. The night before his departure, he held me close in bed and whispered, "I love you more than anything in this world, Abigail. Do not let my family get to you while I'm gone overseas. They will come around eventually, I promise you that." Those words would haunt me for months to come. The first few months of his deployment were tough, but completely manageable. I kept teaching, video called with Michael whenever possible given the time difference, and avoided his family except for obligatory holiday gatherings that I could not politely skip. Then last week, Karen called me. Her voice was warmer than I had ever heard it in all the years I had known her. "Abigail, darling, we haven't seen you in ages and ages. We miss you terribly, and we miss Michael so much. Would you come for dinner this Friday evening? Just family, nothing fancy. I'm making Michael's absolute favorite pot roast recipe." The invitation completely surprised me, but I felt genuinely hopeful for the first time in months. Maybe this was finally the turning point, the olive branch being extended during Michael's absence. I immediately accepted and spent the next few days picking out the perfect gift for them. I spent the next few days carefully selecting a beautiful custom photo frame with the recent picture of Michael in his dress uniform, smiling proudly at the camera. I thought it would touch their hearts and show them how much I loved and supported their son. As I drove to their sprawling mansion in the most affluent part of town, I kept repeating Michael's words in my head. They just need time. Maybe time had finally worked its magic on the Walker family. I checked my appearance one last time in the rearview mirror, straightened my blue dress that Michael always complimented me on, and headed to the front door with a genuinely hopeful heart. I had absolutely no idea that I was walking straight into a carefully planned trap. Karen answered the door with her practiced smile, but she actually welcomed me with what seemed like a sincere hug. "Come in, Abigail, darling. Everyone is waiting in the dining room for you." I stepped inside, clutching my gift bag tightly, feeling those familiar flutter of nerves in my stomach, but pushing them down hard. This was going to be a good night, a fresh start with my in-laws. At least, that is what I desperately wanted to believe. The dining room was absolutely immaculate, exactly as I expected it would be. Crystal glasses caught the light from the massive chandelier overhead, and the antique mahogany table was set with the family's finest china that probably cost more than my monthly salary. General Jason nodded at me from his position at the head of the table, while Ashley offered me one of her tight smiles that never seemed genuine. Justin barely acknowledged my presence at all, scrolling through his phone like I was not even in the room. "You look so comfortable," Ashley commented, her eyes scanning my blue dress from top to bottom. The way she emphasized the word comfortable made it crystal clear this was definitely not meant as a compliment. I had dressed carefully in what I thought was completely appropriate for a family dinner, but suddenly I felt underdressed compared to her obviously expensive designer outfit. "Thank you so much for inviting me tonight," I said politely, placing my carefully chosen gift on a side table. "I brought something special for all of you to enjoy." "How incredibly thoughtful of you," Karen replied smoothly, but she made absolutely no move to open the gift or even acknowledge it properly. "Please sit down right there. The roast will be ready very soon." The conversation during the first course was stilted but remained civil on the surface. General Jason asked about my teaching job, though his tone suggested he was discussing a simple hobby rather than my actual career that I had worked years to build. "And how is the pay these days for elementary school teachers?" he asked, cutting into his salad with military precision that seemed almost aggressive. "It is modest, but incredibly rewarding work. I absolutely love working with the children every single day." He responded, exchanging a meaningful glance with Karen that I pretended not to notice. And your parents? They are still living in, where was it again? Arizona? Yes, sir, I supplied quickly. My father passed away 2 years ago, but my mother still lives in the same house where I grew up. That little bungalow you showed us pictures of once. How wonderfully quaint to stay in one place for so very long like that. Each question seemed deliberately designed to highlight my middle-class background and make me feel small. From pointed inquiries about my student loans to comments about what they called the charming simplicity of our military base housing, I maintained my composure as best I could, answering politely and trying desperately to steer the conversation towards safer, more neutral topics. Michael mentioned in his last call that his unit has been doing some really interesting community outreach work overseas. Yes, we received a much more detailed email about all his activities. I am quite surprised he did not share those specific details with you as well. The implication was crystal clear, and it stung deeply, but I forced myself to smile through the pain. Communication can be pretty limited during deployment overseas. I'm just grateful for any contact we can manage. As the main course was being served, my phone buzzed quietly in my purse. I normally would have completely ignored it during dinner, but given Michael's deployment situation, I always answered calls in case it was him calling from a different number due to connection issues. Would you please excuse me for just a moment? It might be Michael trying to reach me. Karen's expression tightened noticeably, but she nodded curtly. I stepped into the hallway and answered the call, discovering it was just a colleague asking about a shared lesson plan for Monday morning. As I was about to return to the dining room, I heard my name being mentioned clearly, and I instinctively paused to listen. She really thinks she has completely fooled everyone in this family. The little gold digger actually believes Michael will stay with someone like her long term. Keep your voice down, Karen hissed, but definitely not quiet enough for me to hear every single word. But yes, it is absolutely obvious she trapped him. The timing of their engagement right before he received his big promotion and significant pay increase was not a coincidence at all. Did you see that cheap dress she's wearing tonight? Trying so desperately hard to look like she actually belongs in this family. When Michael gets back from deployment, we absolutely need to make him see reason. A brief consultation with a good divorce lawyer, and this unfortunate mistake can be completely erased before children complicate matters even further. I've been quietly gathering evidence, her background, her obvious financial interest in the family money, her behavior while Michael has been away. Michael will thank us when this whole mess is finally over. My heart was pounding so hard in my chest that I was afraid they might actually hear it. My heart was pounding so violently in my chest that I thought it might explode. Tears threatened to spill from my eyes, but I blinked them back with every ounce of strength I had. I had suspected their disapproval for years, but hearing their open hostility and deliberate plans to destroy my marriage shocked me to my absolute core. My first instinct was to grab my purse and run straight out of that house, to escape this place filled with hidden daggers and cruel intentions. But something powerful shifted deep inside me as I stood there trembling in that hallway. I thought of Michael, of our genuine love, of the truth of our relationship that these people were trying to twist and destroy with their lies and manipulation. Running away would only seem to confirm their false narrative about me. I took the deepest breath I could manage, composed myself as much as possible, and made a decision that would change everything. I would confront the situation head on, calmly and with whatever dignity I could summon. I returned to the dining room with my head held high, and the sudden, complete silence confirmed they had indeed been talking about me behind my back. 4 pairs of eyes watched me retake my seat, and I noticed Justin quickly slide his phone into his pocket with obvious guilt written all over his face. Is everything all right, dear? Karen asked, with completely false concern dripping from every word. Actually, I said, my voice steadier than I felt inside, I think we really need to clear the air about some things. I just overheard some very concerning comments, and I believe we should address them directly and honestly. The atmosphere in that elegant dining room shifted instantly, like a sudden drop in air pressure right before a violent thunderstorm hits. I had absolutely no idea just how violent that storm was about to become. The silence that followed my statement was absolutely deafening. Karen recovered first, her practiced social smile sliding back into place like a perfectly fitted mask. I am really not sure what you think you heard, Abigail, but I can assure you there has been some kind of misunderstanding here. Her voice was sweet as honey, but her eyes had turned to solid ice. I heard you call me a gold digger, I stated as plainly and clearly as I could. I heard detailed plans to convince Michael to divorce me when he returns from his deployment. I heard Justin mention gathering evidence against me like I am some kind of criminal. Ashley let out a sharp, cruel laugh. Wow, paranoid much? We were just discussing a television drama we have been watching. If you are going to eavesdrop on private conversations, at least get the context right. I shook my head firmly. I know exactly what I heard, and I understand you have serious concerns about my background and my intentions. But I married Michael because I love him with all my heart, not because of money or social status or anything else. Oh, please, spare us the innocent act. Justin finally looked up from his lap, his expression filled with pure contempt. A small-town teacher from a nobody family just happens to fall madly in love with one of the most eligible officers from one of the most respected military families in the entire state, right after he gets his big promotion. Do the math, sweetheart. I did not even know about Michael's promotion when we got engaged, and I have my own savings account. I have never once asked Michael or any of you for a single penny. General Jason cleared his throat with military authority. Young lady, you need to understand our position here. The Walker family has a certain standing in this community. Michael has an extremely promising career and a bright future ahead of him. We simply want to protect him from making impulsive decisions he will regret later. Impulsive? I felt my carefully maintained composure starting to slip away. We dated for 9 months before getting engaged. We have been happily married for 4 years. That is hardly what anyone would call impulsive behavior. 4 years during which he has been deployed overseas twice? Karen cut in sharply. When military men are away from home, they tend to idealize whatever they left behind. Michael will see everything much more clearly when he returns to reality. He sees clearly right now, I insisted, pulling out my phone with shaking hands. Just yesterday, he texted me saying how much he loves me and how he cannot wait to come home to me. I opened our text message thread to show them, holding up the screen displaying Michael's loving words that he had sent just 24 hours earlier. Counting down the days until I can hold you in my arms again, beautiful. You are my heart, my home, my everything. Only 4 more weeks to go. Karen's face contorted with rage, and she suddenly snatched my phone right out of my hand before I could react. These messages could easily be manipulated or faked. For all we know, you could be texting yourself from a second phone to create false evidence. Give me back my phone right now, I demanded, standing up from my chair with my heart racing. That is my private property. Or what? Ashley smirked with obvious enjoyment. You're going to call the police on your own mother-in-law for examining suspicious text messages? Those are private messages between me and my husband, I said firmly, reaching across the table for my phone. You have absolutely no right to take it. Karen pulled the device away from my reach, handing it directly to Justin, who immediately pocketed it with a satisfied grin.
We'll just hold on to this until we can properly verify these messages are actually from Michael or not some elaborate fabrication. This is completely ridiculous, I said, my heart pounding with a mixture of anger and growing fear. You have no right to take my property or accuse me of lying about my own marriage. We have every right to protect our son and brother. Karen stood up now, too, using her considerable height to loom over me menacingly. You wormed your way into his life, into our family, but you absolutely do not belong here with people like us. I am his wife, I said as firmly as I could manage, though my voice was starting to break under the pressure. A temporary situation, General Jason stated coldly from his position of authority. One that will be remedied very soon. They were closing ranks around me like predators, and I suddenly felt physically trapped and completely helpless. They were closing ranks around me like hungry predators, and I suddenly felt physically trapped as Ashley moved to stand beside her mother. Both women now positioned themselves between me and the only exit from the dining room. Justin remained seated, but watched with undisguised amusement, as if he was enjoying a show put on specifically for his entertainment. I think I should leave right now, I said, trying to maintain whatever dignity I had left in this horrible situation. Please return my phone immediately. Not until you listen very carefully to what we have to say. Karen stepped closer, invading my personal space in the most intimidating way possible. Her expensive perfume was cloying and suffocating, making it hard for me to breathe normally. We know all about your father's gambling debts that destroyed your family. We know about your substantial student loans that you are still paying off. We know you were practically living paycheck to paycheck before you met our Michael. I gasped in shock and horror. They had been actively investigating my personal background like I was some kind of criminal. That is all completely true, and Michael knows every single detail about my past. My father struggled with addiction before he died. I worked incredibly hard to put myself through college, and I have never hidden any of that from anyone. It has absolutely nothing to do with why I married Michael. Stop this ridiculous innocent act right now, Ashley spat with pure venom. Women like you are all exactly the same. You saw a golden opportunity and you took it without any shame. The accusations were piling up faster than I could respond to them. Each one was more hurtful than the last. I felt tears threatening to spill from my eyes, but I absolutely refused to cry in front of these cruel people. I need to leave this house right now, I said, trying to step around Karen's imposing figure. This conversation is over. Karen moved to block my path completely. Not until you agree to divorce Michael quietly when he returns from deployment. We can make it worth your while financially, a generous settlement that will be enough to pay off all your debts and give you a fresh start somewhere far away from here. The blatant bribery attempt was the absolute final straw for me. I would never take your blood money, and I will never leave Michael unless he asks me to himself, which he absolutely will not, because unlike all of you, he knows exactly who I really am and loves me for it. That was the moment when everything escalated from verbal abuse to physical violence, crossing a line I never imagined they would dare to cross in a million years. It happened so fast that I barely had time to react or defend myself. Karen's face contorted with pure rage, her carefully maintained social facade crumbling completely like a house of cards. Her hand flew up and connected with my cheek with such tremendous force that I stumbled backward, crashing hard into the dining room wall behind me. The sharp sound of the slap echoed loudly in the suddenly silent room. The shock was more paralyzing than the actual pain at first. My cheek burns like fire, and I raised my trembling hand to touch it, completely unable to process that my mother-in-law had actually struck me with her own hand. In 4 long years of thinly veiled hostility and passive-aggressive behavior, it had never once turned physical like this. How dare you speak to me like that in my own house? Karen hissed, her voice trembling with uncontrolled anger. You little nobody from nowhere. I was still desperately trying to find words when Ashley stepped forward with the look of pure contempt and disgust on her perfectly made-up face. Without any warning whatsoever, she spat directly in my face with deliberate cruelty. The warm saliva slid down my cheek in the most humiliating way possible, mixing with the tears that had finally broken free despite my best efforts to hold them back. Gold digger. That is exactly what you are and what you will always be. Justin burst into cruel laughter from his seat at the table, pulling out his phone once again. This is absolutely priceless, he chuckled with obvious delight, clearly recording the entire scene for his own twisted entertainment. Wait until the guys at the country club see this footage. The humiliation burned worse than the physical slap had. I wiped my face with shaking hands, smearing tears and spit across my burning cheek. I had never felt so completely degraded, so utterly dehumanized by people who were supposed to be family. You are absolutely nothing, Karen continued, her voice low and venomous like a poisonous snake. A complete nobody who thought she could elevate herself by catching a Walker man. Let me make this perfectly clear to you, Abigail. You will never be good enough for my son. Never, ever, ever. General Jason remained seated throughout the entire assault, watching the scene unfold without any intervention whatsoever. His deliberate silence was a tacit approval that cut almost as deeply as the physical violence itself. Michael will be completely disgusted when he finds out who you really are, Ashley added with cruel satisfaction. We have friends all over town who have seen you around while he has been deployed, getting a little too friendly with other men, are we? That is a complete lie, I managed to say through my tears and the taste of blood in my mouth from where I had bitten my tongue during the slap. I have never been unfaithful to Michael, not even once. Your word against ours, Justin taunted from behind his phone camera, still recording every moment of my complete humiliation. And who exactly do you think Michael will believe? The family who has supported him his entire life, or the gold-digging teacher who mysteriously appeared right before his big promotion? I pushed myself away from the wall, summoning whatever dignity I had left in my battered body and broken spirit. I am leaving this house right now, and you cannot stop me. We are not finished with you yet, Karen declared, stepping in front of me once again to block my escape route. Yes, we absolutely are, I said, my voice stronger than I actually felt inside. I will not stay here another second to be abused by any of you. Abused? She let out a cold, heartless laugh. You have no idea what real abuse looks like, little girl. This is nothing compared to what will happen if you try to fight us on the divorce proceedings. We have resources you cannot even imagine, connections in places that would make your simple little teacher life very, very difficult. The threats were becoming more explicit and dangerous by the minute. And the thread of genuine fear wound through my anger and humiliation. These people were wealthy and powerful, and they were clearly willing to cross lines I had never thought possible. I need to get my purse and leave this house immediately, I said, trying to sound calm while my heart raced with terror. Only after you agree to our terms, Karen insisted with steel in her voice, a quick, quiet divorce when Michael returns from deployment. We can make it worth your while financially. A generous settlement that will be enough to pay off all your debts and give you a fresh start somewhere far away from here.
No. I stood my ground as firmly as I could, though my legs felt weak beneath me and my entire body was trembling. I will not be bullied or bribed by any of you. Ashley moved even closer to me, her expensive perfume mixing with her mother's in a suffocating cloud that made me feel nauseous. You stupid, stubborn little fool. Do you really think you can win a war against us? Do you have any idea what we are capable of? This is not a war, I said through gritted teeth. I love Michael with all my heart. That is the only thing that matters to me in this entire world. Love, Justin mocked cruelly, still recording everything with his phone held high. How incredibly touching and romantic. Tell us more about this great epic love story while I capture your good side for posterity. I lunged desperately for his phone, trying to stop the recording that I knew would be edited and used against me later. But General Jason finally stood up from his chair, moving with surprising speed for his age to block my path completely. "That is quite enough," he said in his commanding military voice. But he was addressing me, not his children who had just physically assaulted me. "You will leave this house immediately, but not before you fully understand your position in all of this." "What position?" I asked incredulously. "The position of being slapped and spat on by my husband's family?" "The position of someone who is about to lose everything," he replied coldly. "We will be speaking to Michael as soon as possible about everything that has transpired during his absence overseas, including your obvious emotional instability and erratic behavior." "You mean the emotional instability of being physically assaulted by 3 members of his family?" I asked in complete disbelief. "That is not what the video evidence will show." Justin smirked with satisfaction, waving his phone in front of my face. "It is funny how clever editing can completely change the narrative of events." I felt a new wave of panic wash over me like a freezing cold tide. They were not just physically assaulting me in their dining room, they were actively planning to manipulate digital evidence against me. This was calculated cruelty of the worst possible kind. Through my tears and the ringing in my ears from the slap, I heard the distinct sound of the front door opening somewhere in the house. But in the intensity of the confrontation, no one else seemed to notice or care about the interruption. Heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway, drawing closer and closer to the dining room where my nightmare was unfolding. "You will regret the day you ever met my son," Karen was saying, her finger pointed directly in my bruised face. "By the time we are completely finished with you, Michael will not even remember why he thought he wanted to marry someone like you." "I am calling my lawyer first thing tomorrow morning," Ashley added with vindictive pleasure. "I have a friend who specializes in military divorces. He says they are always incredibly messy affairs, but money has a way of cleaning up even the messiest situations quite effectively." I was backed against the wall once again, surrounded by 3 people who hated me for reasons I could never change or control, with the fourth person documenting my complete humiliation for their own twisted purposes. I had never felt so alone, so completely trapped and helpless in my entire life. Then, everything changed in a single instant. "What exactly is going on here?" The new voice cut through the room like a blade made of pure ice, deep and authoritative and terrifyingly familiar to every person in that room. Everyone froze completely, as if we had all been turned to stone. Standing in the doorway like an avenging angel, still wearing his combat uniform that was dusty from international travel, was Michael. The silence that fell over the dining room was absolutely complete and deafening. Karen's pointing finger remained suspended in midair, while her face drained of every drop of color. Ashley took an instinctive step backward, as if she had been struck by lightning. Justin hurriedly lowered his phone with obvious panic written all over his guilty face. General Jason stood straighter as his military training kicked in, even in his state of complete shock. Michael's expression was completely unreadable as he surveyed the scene before him with the careful eye of a trained soldier. His gaze moved methodically from his mother's aggressive stance to my tear-streaked face, clearly noting the bright red handprint blooming across my cheek. He was still wearing his combat boots and carrying his heavy rucksack, having obviously come directly from whatever transport had brought him home from overseas.
Michael, Karen recovered first, her voice instantly transforming into a warm, maternal tone that sounded completely fake after what I had just experienced. What a wonderful surprise this is. We had absolutely no idea you were coming home today. She moved toward him with her arms outstretched for a welcoming hug, but Michael raised his hand firmly, stopping her dead in her tracks. Do not move another step, he said, his voice quiet but hard as granite and twice as cold. I want to understand exactly what I just walked in on here. Karen's practiced smile faltered noticeably. We were just having a little family disagreement, sweetheart. You know how emotional Abigail can get sometimes when she misunderstands things. She completely misinterpreted something we said and lashed out at us. I opened my mouth to protest this blatant lie, but Michael shook his head slightly in my direction, silently telling me to wait and let him handle the situation. Is that so? He asked, his penetrating gaze now fixed directly on Justin. And you were recording this little family disagreement because why exactly? Justin shifted uncomfortably under his brother's intense stare. I, uh,
Ashley glanced nervously at her mother, then back at Michael with fear clearly visible in her eyes. Abigail was being completely hysterical and irrational, Michael. You know exactly how she gets when she feels cornered or criticized. Michael nodded slowly, his expression remaining completely neutral. Then he finally turned his full attention to me, and I saw something I had never seen before in his kind eyes. A cold fury that made my blood run completely cold. Abigail, he said softly, tell me exactly what happened here tonight. Every single detail. I took a shaky breath, my voice barely above a whisper. They invited me to dinner under false pretenses. I overheard them in this very room calling me a gold digger and making detailed plans to convince you to divorce me when you returned from deployment. When I confronted them about what I had heard, your mother slapped me so hard I crashed into the wall. Ashley spat directly in my face while calling me names, and Justin recorded the whole thing while laughing at my humiliation. She is lying through her teeth, Karen interjected desperately. Michael, you cannot possibly believe these wild accusations. She has always been jealous of our family's close relationship. Stop talking immediately, Michael cut her off, his voice like a whip crack that made everyone in the room jump. I was standing outside this dining room door for the last 5 minutes of this conversation. I heard and saw absolutely everything that happened. The blood drained from Karen's face so completely that she looked like a ghost. You must have misunderstood what you heard and saw, sweetheart. Did I misunderstand you slapping my wife across the face, Mother? Michael asked, his carefully maintained control finally slipping as raw anger seeped into his voice for the first time. Did I misunderstand Ashley spitting in her face like she was garbage? Did I misunderstand the threats about making her life difficult and manipulating evidence against her? No one in the room could speak. The only sound was the steady ticking of the antique grandfather clock in the corner, counting down the seconds of their complete exposure. My deployment was delayed at the very last minute due to weather conditions. I thought I would surprise my family with the good news that I was coming home early. It turns out I'm the one who received the biggest surprise of all. Son, General Jason tried again with desperation creeping into his authoritative voice. We were only trying to protect you from making a serious mistake. This woman has clearly manipulated you. This woman is my wife, Michael finished for him with ice-cold precision. The woman I love more than my own life. The woman I chose to spend my future with. And you just physically assaulted her in what is supposed to be our family home. It was hardly assault, Karen scoffed, though her confidence was clearly shaken to its core. A little slap never hurt anyone, especially someone as dramatic as she is.
Tell that to the security cameras I had professionally installed last Christmas. The ones that cover every single public room in this house, including this dining room where we are standing right now. This new revelation sent another massive shockwave through the room like an earthquake. Justin's face went completely pale as he glanced up at the ceiling for the first time, finally noticing the small recording device nestled discreetly among the crystal pendants of the ornate chandelier above our heads. "You recorded us?" Ashley asked in rising panic, her voice cracking with fear. "Everything we said and did is on camera?" "I had a complete security system installed after some valuable silver pieces went missing from the house. Mother insisted it was probably one of the cleaning staff members, but I wanted to be absolutely certain of the facts. It turns out those cameras captured something far more valuable than stolen silverware tonight." He walked over to where I was still pressed against the wall, gently examining my face and wiping away fresh tears with his thumb. His touch was so gentle after the violence I had just experienced. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" he asked softly, with his voice full of love and concern. I nodded, unable to speak through the overwhelming knot of emotion lodged in my throat. "Where's your phone?" he asked, noticing my empty hands. "Justin took it from me," I managed to whisper. Michael turned toward his younger brother with his hand expectantly extended. "Give it to me right now." Justin reluctantly pulled my phone from his pocket and handed it to him without making eye contact. "Are your car keys in your purse?" he asked me gently, and I nodded in response. "Where's your purse?" "In the front hallway where I left it," I whispered. "We're leaving this house immediately," Michael announced, keeping his protective arm around me. "But before we go, let me make something absolutely crystal clear to every single person in this room." He faced his family with an expression harder and more determined than I had ever seen in all our years together. "Abelia is my wife. She is my family now, my top priority, my heart and soul. What you did tonight crossed every possible line of basic human decency and respect. I have never been so completely ashamed to carry the Walker name as I am standing here right now." "Michael, please listen to reason," Karen began with tears forming in her eyes for the first time all evening. "We only wanted what we thought was best for your future." "No," he cut her off without any mercy. "You wanted what you thought was best for the family image and reputation. You never once bothered to actually get to know Abelia, to see what I see in her, to understand why I fell in love with her and chose to make her my partner for life. You taught me throughout my entire childhood that a person's true character is revealed during times of crisis. Dad, tonight has been incredibly revealing about all of your characters." General Jason had no response whatsoever. His lifetime of military bearing and authority was failing him completely for perhaps the first time in his entire adult life. "We are going to our real home now," Michael continued with absolute finality. "Tomorrow morning, I will be reviewing all the security footage, filing a detailed police report for assault and battery, and contacting our family lawyer about our legal options going forward." "You would actually choose her over your own flesh and blood family?" Ashley asked with complete incredulity, her voice cracking with disbelief. Michael looked at his sister with genuine sadness in his eyes. "I am not the one who created this impossible choice, Ashley. You did when you decided to assault my wife. And yes, I choose her every single time, without hesitation." He picked up my purse from the hallway where I had left it hours ago and guided me firmly toward the front door, leaving his stunned family frozen like statues in the dining room behind us. As we stepped out into the cool evening air, I felt the crushing weight of the entire confrontation finally begin to lift from my shoulders, replaced by overwhelming relief at having Michael by my side when I needed him most desperately. The drive to our home was mostly silent except for the hum of the engine. Michael kept one strong hand on the steering wheel and held my trembling hand firmly with the other, as if he was afraid I might disappear completely if he let go for even a second. I could see the muscle in his jaw working overtime as he processed everything that had happened in that house tonight. "I am so incredibly sorry, Abigail," he finally said as we turned onto our quiet street.
I had absolutely no idea they were capable of going that far. I never thought they could become physically violent with anyone, especially you. It is not your fault at all, I assured him, though my voice was still shaky from everything I had endured. You could not have possibly known they would cross that line tonight. He pulled into our driveway and turned off the engine, but made no immediate move to get out of the car. We sat there in complete silence for several minutes. I knew they could be difficult and elitist in their attitudes, he said quietly, but physical violence, recording it for blackmail purposes, threatening you with financial ruin, I completely dismissed warning signs over the years as simple overprotectiveness on their part. Warning signs? I asked, suddenly connecting dots that had been scattered in my mind. Michael sighed heavily, running his free hand through his short military haircut. There were things they said about my previous girlfriend before I met you. Comments they made, the way they systematically made her feel unwelcomed and inferior. But it never escalated to actual violence, as far as I knew. Your ex-girlfriend? I asked, remembering how he had mentioned her briefly years ago. What exactly happened with her? Her name was Rebecca, Michael explained with obvious regret in his voice. She came from a working-class background just like you do, putting herself through nursing school while working multiple jobs. My family was consistently cold and unwelcoming toward her, made her feel like she did not belong in their social circle. When I was deployed for the first time, she broke up with me through a letter. She said she couldn't handle the distance and uncertainty of military life, but now, I wonder if my family actively sabotaged our relationship behind my back. We sat in contemplative silence for another moment before finally going inside our home. Our small home on the military base felt like a complete sanctuary after the nightmare we had just escaped from. Michael placed his heavy rucksack by the front door and pulled me into the gentlest embrace possible, being extremely careful of my still tender and swollen cheek. I need you to know something absolutely crucial, Abigail, he said, looking directly into my eyes with complete sincerity. I have never doubted you for even a single second, Abigail. Not about your love, not about your motives, not about anything. I married you because you are genuinely the love of my life, not because of anything to do with family expectations or military traditions. I nodded through fresh tears, but this time they were tears of relief and gratitude. I know that deep in my heart. I never doubted your love either, even during the worst moments tonight. Good, he said, kissing my forehead with infinite tenderness. Now let us get some ice for that bruise on your beautiful face, and you can tell me exactly what happened from the very beginning of the evening. Over steaming mugs of chamomile tea with a bag of frozen peas pressed gently against my cheek, I recounted the entire horrific evening in complete detail. Michael listened without interrupting even once, though his expression darkened significantly several times, particularly when I described the physical confrontation and the explicit threats they had made against me. They are not going to get away with any of this, he said with quiet determination when I finished my account. What they did constitutes clear assault and battery under the law. The blackmail threats and plans to manipulate evidence cross directly into criminal territory. What exactly are you planning to do? I asked, suddenly worried about escalating the situation even further. First thing tomorrow morning, I am going to remotely access the security system and download all the footage, he said with military precision. Then we are going directly to the police station to file formal charges and obtain temporary restraining orders against all of them. After that, I will contact my commanding officer to explain the situation professionally, and then we will call our legal lawyer to discuss our legal options. Are you absolutely sure about taking such drastic steps? I asked, though part of me desperately wanted justice for what they had done to me. They are still your family, Michael. Real family doesn't treat family members the way they treated you tonight, and they need to understand that there are serious consequences for their criminal actions. The next morning, Michael was true to every word he had spoken. He remotely accessed the security system and downloaded the complete footage, which showed the entire confrontation in crystal clear detail, including Karen slapping me and Ashley spitting in my face. The audio captured every threat, every lie, every single moment of my humiliation with perfect clarity.
At the police station, the officers were professional but clearly disturbed by the footage we showed them. A female officer gently photographed the dark bruise on my cheek, which had become much more prominent overnight, while another officer took our detailed statements about the entire incident. "You want to press full charges, Captain Young?" the desk sergeant asked, somewhat surprised given the prominent social standing of the Walker family in our community. "Absolutely, without question," Michael confirmed without the slightest hesitation. "And we need complete information about obtaining restraining orders against all 4 family members." By noon, we had filed the official police report and submitted all the necessary paperwork for temporary restraining orders against Karen, Ashley, Justin, and General Jason. Even though the general had not physically assaulted me directly, Michael included him in the order due to his clear complicity and failure to intervene during the attack. As we were leaving the courthouse, Michael's phone buzzed continuously with incoming messages and calls from various members of his family. He ignored every single one of them, except for a text message from Justin that made him stop dead in his tracks. "What is it?" I asked, seeing his expression harden into stone. "Justin posted an edited clip from last night online. He cut and manipulated it to make it appear like you were the aggressor who attacked them first. He tagged dozens of military spouses and community members in the post." My stomach dropped to my feet. "Oh no, this is going to destroy my reputation completely." "Do not worry about his pathetic attempt at manipulation," he said, his voice calm but absolutely freezing cold. "He just made our legal case even stronger than it already was. Now we can add defamation and cyberbullying to the assault charges." We headed straight to the office of Major Harrison, Michael's commanding officer, who had known the Walker family for many years through various military social functions. I was genuinely nervous about how he would react, given the family's respected standing in military circles and their long history of service. To my complete surprise, after viewing the unedited security footage that clearly showed the truth of what had happened, Major Harrison was absolutely unequivocal in his support for us. "This kind of behavior is completely unacceptable regardless of who is involved or what their social status might be," he stated firmly, his military bearing evident in every word. "Captain Young, please be assured that your career will not be negatively affected in any way by your family's actions or by your decision to pursue appropriate legal recourse. In fact, I would have been seriously concerned about your judgment if you had not taken proper steps to protect your wife." The major also revealed something that I had not known previously, something that completely destroyed one of the family's main arguments against me. "Your recent promotion had absolutely nothing to do with your family's wealth or social connections, by the way," he continued with professional certainty. "That advancement was earned entirely through your exemplary service record, leadership skills, and dedication to your men. I would have recommended you for promotion regardless of your last name or family background." Michael nodded gratefully, though I could tell this official confirmation meant everything to him. "Thank you so much for your support, sir. I genuinely appreciate your understanding of this difficult situation." As we left the base headquarters, Michael's phone buzzed again with another message. "It is Jeff," he said, referring to one of his closest friends from his unit. "He says Justin's manipulated video is backfiring spectacularly on social media. Several of the military spouses who were tagged in the post have recognized the obvious editing tricks and are publicly calling him out for his deception." Jeff's message continued with even better news. Apparently, Laura managed to get a copy of the original unedited footage somehow, and she is sharing it widely to show the truth of what really happened. Laura was the wife of Michael's platoon sergeant and one of the most influential and respected figures among the military spouse community. She had always been incredibly kind to me, regularly inviting me to social events and checking in on me during Michael's deployments when I was feeling isolated and lonely. "The entire military community is rallying behind us," Michael said, a genuine smile breaking through his serious expression for the first time since he had returned home. "Justice has a way of revealing itself, even when people try to manipulate the truth." When we returned home that evening, we discovered several heartwarming messages of support on our answering machine and a large basket filled with home-cooked meals sitting on our front porch. Our neighbors had heard about the incident through the tight-knit military community network and wanted to show their solidarity with us during this difficult time. That evening, as we were trying to process everything that had happened over the past 24 hours, our family lawyer called with a detailed update on the legal proceedings. The police questioned Karen, Ashley, and Justin separately this afternoon. Their individual stories contradicted each other significantly, which strengthens your case considerably. Justin's decision to post that edited video online constitutes clear evidence tampering and potentially serious defamation. The temporary restraining orders have been officially granted by the court, and preliminary charges of assault, battery, and conspiracy are being actively considered by the district attorney's office. "What does all this mean for us going forward?" Michael asked, holding my hand tightly as we listened to the legal update. "It means you have a very strong case," the lawyer replied confidently. "The security footage provides irrefutable evidence. The physical injuries are well documented, and their attempt to manipulate public opinion through social media has completely backfired. I expect they will want to negotiate a settlement rather than face a public trial." "They underestimated you completely," Michael said to me as we sat together on our front porch swing that night, looking up at the stars. "And they definitely underestimated the consequences of their actions and the support we would receive from our real community." "I never wanted any of this conflict," I admitted honestly. "Part of me had always hoped that they would eventually come to accept me as part of their family." Michael squeezed my hand gently. "I know you did, sweetheart. But sometimes people show you exactly who they really are through their actions, and you have to believe them. My biological family showed us both their true character last night, and it was uglier than I ever imagined possible." "What about the money aspect of all this?" I asked, addressing something that had been bothering me. "They seem so convinced that I married you for financial security, but we live in basic military housing and drive cars that are over 10 years old." Michael actually laughed, the first genuine laugh I had heard from him since his return home. "That is the most ironic part of this entire situation. They assumed you knew about my inheritance from my grandfather that I have never even mentioned to you because it doesn't matter to our daily life at all. I have never touched a penny of that money, and I never told you about it because we live comfortably on my military salary by choice." "I had no idea about this," I said, genuinely surprised by this revelation. "See what a terrible gold digger you turned out to be?" he teased gently, kissing my forehead with love. "Yes, I have a substantial trust fund that becomes fully accessible when I turn 35 next year, but I have never planned to use it for anything than maybe buying that small farm we talk about for our retirement someday." This revelation was just one more confirmation of how little their family had actually understood our relationship, how little they had bothered to know me personally or respect their son's choices and judgment. As the weeks passed following that terrible night, the legal proceedings continued steadily forward. The Walker family hired the most expensive lawyers money could buy, of course, but the evidence against them was irrefutable and overwhelming. In the end, faced with the certainty of public humiliation and criminal conviction, they accepted a comprehensive plea deal that included supervised probation, mandatory community service, court-ordered counseling for anger management and family dynamics, and a significant financial settlement that Michael and I immediately donated to a charity supporting military families in crisis. More importantly than the legal victory, the entire experience had revealed who our true friends and support system really were. The military community had closed ranks around us protectively, offering unwavering support and understanding. My colleagues at the elementary school had sent flowers and voluntarily covered all of my classes when I needed time off for court appearances and therapy sessions. Most importantly of all, Michael and I discovered that our bond was stronger than any external force that had tried to break it apart.
6 months after that terrible night that changed everything, Michael and I are sitting on the front porch of our beautiful new home, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. We moved off the military base just last month, finally finding a charming 3-bedroom house in a peaceful neighborhood about 20 minutes from Fort Stewart. It is not quite the farm we dream of owning someday when Michael retires from active duty, but it represents a significant step forward from base housing and a place that is truly and completely ours. "Penny for your thoughts?" Michael says softly, handing me a steaming mug of hot chocolate, despite the Georgia evening still holding on to the day's lingering warmth. "Just thinking about how dramatically everything has changed," I reply, accepting the mug gratefully and breathing in the sweet aroma. Good changes mostly, really good changes. And they truly have been positive changes in almost every way. After the incident, I took a temporary leave of absence from my teaching position to focus on healing, both physically and emotionally, from the trauma. The visible bruise on my face faded completely within just a few weeks, but the psychological impact took much longer to process and work through. With the help of a skilled therapist who specializes in family trauma and domestic violence, I worked through many of the complex emotions that threatened to overwhelm me in the aftermath. The hurt, the sense of betrayal, the lingering fear, and the anger that sometimes felt like it might consume me entirely. When I finally felt ready to return to work several months later, a perfect position opened up at the elementary school right here on the military base, teaching children of military families whose lives are constantly disrupted by deployments, relocations, and the unique stresses of military life. It feels like the ideal fit for my skills and experience, using my own difficult experiences to help these remarkably resilient children navigate their own unique challenges. Michael has been my absolute rock throughout this entire healing journey. He never once wavered in his complete support, attending every therapy session I asked him to, holding me through the nightmares that plagued me during those early weeks, and ensuring I never had to face any member of his family alone during the lengthy legal proceedings. "Have you read the email from your mother that came this morning?" I asked carefully, broaching the subject that we both know needs to be addressed eventually. Michael sighs deeply. "Yes, I read it twice, actually. She wants to meet for coffee next week. She says she has been completely consistent with her court-mandated therapy sessions and has important things she wants to say to both of us." Karen's mandatory therapy was originally part of her probation requirements, but according to the progress reports her therapist has been submitting to the court, she has gone well beyond the minimum required sessions. She appears to be genuinely committed to understanding her controlling behavior patterns and working through her sense of entitlement and superiority. "What do you think?" I asked gently. "Are you ready to see her face to face?" Michael considers the question carefully for several long moments. "I think I am ready, but not for her sake. I am doing it for myself, for us. Carrying around all this anger and resentment is absolutely exhausting, and it is not healthy for either of us." The path toward any kind of reconciliation with the Walker family has been incredibly complicated and is still far from complete. General Jason was actually the first family member to offer what seemed like a genuine apology. His military discipline and training perhaps made him more accustomed to acknowledging serious mistakes and accepting the consequences for his actions. He has maintained a respectful distance from us, writing formal letters to both Michael and me that acknowledge his complete failure to intervene during the assault, and his inexcusable complicity in creating such a hostile and threatening environment. Ashley took much longer to come around to any kind of genuine remorse. Her initial apology was clearly forced and completely insincere, obviously written by her expensive lawyer. But 3 months into her court-ordered community service at a local women's shelter, something fundamental seemed to shift in her perspective. The shelter director told us privately that working directly with women who had experienced domestic violence and abuse
opened Ashley's eyes to the real impact of her own actions that night. Her most recent letter seemed to reflect what appeared to be genuine change in her understanding and perspective. Justin has been by far the most resistant to making any kind of meaningful amends for his behavior. The public exposure of his manipulated video and the subsequent damage to his reputation among his peers hit him harder than any legal consequences could have. He lost the prestigious internship opportunity and faced significant social backlash from people who had trusted him. His court-mandated anger management classes are still ongoing, and Michael occasionally receives brief updates about his progress, but no real apology or acknowledgement of wrongdoing has been forthcoming from him. I never thought forgiveness would be such a complicated and ongoing process, I admit honestly, leaning against Michael's strong shoulder for comfort. But another part of you recognizes that holding on to that anger indefinitely only hurts you. Michael reminds me gently, echoing something our therapist has said many times. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting what happened or allowing them back into our lives on the same terms as before. This philosophy has become our guiding principle over the past months, a constant reminder that establishing healthy boundaries is not the same as harboring destructive resentment. We have created a careful structure for any potential contact with the Walker family in the future. Limited and supervised interactions that protect our peace of mind while allowing for the possibility of genuine change over time. One completely unexpected positive outcome from this painful chapter has been my involvement with a support group for military spouses dealing with difficult family dynamics. What began as seeking support for my own healing evolved into co-leading weekly meetings, creating a safe space for others to share their challenges. Laura called this afternoon. I referred to our friend who had been so instrumental in supporting us. The support group is expanding to include a second meeting night each week because we have so many participants now. Apparently, family conflicts with in-laws are much more common in military marriages than anyone talks about openly. Michael smiles with genuine pride. You have taken something incredibly painful and turned it into something helpful and healing for other people. That is exactly who you are, Abigail. That is one of the countless reasons I love you so much. I take his hand, still marveling sometimes at how solid and unshakable our connection remains despite everything that tried to destroy it. I have some news, I say, my heart fluttering with excitement and nervousness. Important news that I think will make you very happy. Michael turns to look at me directly, his eyebrows raised in curious anticipation. I am pregnant, I say, the words still feeling new and wonderful on my lips. 8 weeks along. I confirmed it with the doctor yesterday afternoon. Michael's expression transforms completely, pure joy breaking across his features like sunshine after a storm. Really? We're going to have a baby? I nod, tears of happiness welling up in my eyes. We're going to have a baby, Michael. He pulls me gently into his arms, being mindful and protective, even though I have assured him repeatedly that I am not fragile. This is the most amazing news, sweetheart. How are you feeling? Are you okay? I feel wonderful, a little morning sickness, but nothing too difficult to handle. I hesitate, before adding, I've been thinking a lot about family lately. Obviously about what kind of parents we want to be, what kind of extended family our child will have. We get to define what family means for us and for our child, he says thoughtfully. We will surround them with love and with people who demonstrate respect, kindness, and healthy boundaries. Do you think your biological family should be part of our child's life? I ask the question that has been weighing heavily on my mind for weeks. Michael considers this carefully, as he does all important decisions. I think that depends entirely on their continued actions, not just their words or promises. He says with measured wisdom, if they can consistently show that they have genuinely changed, if they can respect our boundaries and treat both of us with real respect and dignity, then yes, I would want our child to know their grandparents and aunt and uncle, but only if it is completely safe emotionally and physically. His thoughtful response reassures me completely. We are still perfectly in sync, still partners navigating difficult terrain together with mutual respect and love. As twilight deepens around us and the first stars begin to appear in the clear sky, I reflect on all the lessons of the past 6 months. I have learned that standing up for yourself is not selfish, but absolutely necessary for your well-being. That true love includes protection and advocacy for your partner. That family is ultimately defined by actions and choices, not just blood relationships. And perhaps most importantly, that even in our darkest moments, we have the capacity to find strength we never knew we possessed. What does not break us makes us stronger, I murmur, quoting one of our therapist's favorite sayings that has become meaningful to both of us. Michael kisses the top of my head tenderly. We were already strong individually. Now we are completely unbreakable together. As we sit in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one, I feel a deep sense of peace and contentment that I have not experienced in years. The road ahead will certainly have its challenges, as all roads do, but we will face them together, wiser and stronger for everything we have already overcome. 3 weeks later, we meet Karen at a small coffee shop in neutral territory, far from both our home and the Walker family mansion. She looks older somehow, more humble, with none of the imperious bearing that had defined her for so long. "Thank you both for agreeing to see me," she begins, her voice lacking its usual commanding tone. "I know I have no right to ask for your time or consideration after what I did." She apologizes sincerely for her actions, acknowledging the physical assault, the emotional abuse, and the damage she caused to our marriage and our sense of safety. She explains how the therapy has helped her understand her own controlling behaviors and the toxic patterns she learned from her own upbringing in a wealthy, status-obsessed family. "I realize now that I never actually got to know you as a person, Abigail. I made assumptions based on prejudice and fear, and I treated you terribly because of my own insecurities about losing Michael." The conversation is difficult but ultimately healing. We establish clear boundaries for any future relationship, including supervised visits and immediate consequences if any disrespectful behavior occurs. Michael makes it crystal clear that any relationship with their future grandchild is completely conditional on continued respectful treatment of both of us. 6 months later, our daughter Emma is born, healthy, and perfect. As I hold her in my arms for the first time, I am overwhelmed with love and determination to give her the secure, loving family environment that every child deserves. The Walker family maintains their respectful distance but send thoughtful gifts and cards. They ask permission before visiting and never overstay their welcome. Karen has continued her therapy and actually seems to be developing genuine affection for me as a person, not just tolerance as Michael's wife. Ashley has become involved in domestic violence advocacy work and has apologized multiple times for her actions. Justin remains the most distant, but he has completed his court requirements and seems to be working on his own personal growth. Most importantly, Michael and I have created the loving, respectful family we always dreamed of. Our home is filled with laughter, support, and unconditional love. We have learned to set boundaries without harboring resentment, to forgive without forgetting important lessons, and to build something beautiful from the ashes of conflict. As I rock Emma to sleep one evening, I think about the story I will tell her someday when she is old enough to understand. I will tell her that standing up for yourself and the people you love is always worth it, even when it is frightening and difficult. I will teach her that true strength comes not from avoiding conflict, but from facing it with dignity and integrity. That real family is built on respect, love, and shared values, not just shared genetics. And most importantly, I will show her through our example that love really can conquer hate, that justice really does prevail in the end, and that sometimes the worst experiences in our lives can become the foundation for our greatest happiness. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who treated you unfairly? I would ask if I were still telling the story to an audience. What gave you the strength to set boundaries with difficult people in your life? But this is not just a story anymore. This is our real life, our real family, our real happiness that we fought for and won. Michael comes into the nursery and wraps his arms around both Emma and me. "What are you thinking about?" he asks softly. "Just how grateful I am. For you, for her, for the strength we found to fight for our family." "We make a pretty good team," he says, kissing my forehead. "The best team," I agree, watching our daughter sleep peacefully in her father's arms. Outside, the sun is setting on another beautiful day in our beautiful life. We have learned that happiness is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of love strong enough to survive any storm. And our love, tested by fire and proven unbreakable, will be Emma's greatest inheritance and our most important legacy. The end of our story is really just the beginning of hers, and I know it will be magnificent.